Right now, somewhere in the world, thousands of people are standing in front of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Some are taking selfies, others are simply staring in disbelief. And honestly, it's hard not to. These giant stone structures have been standing in the Egyptian desert for more than 4,500 years. But here's the strange part. They're not just enormous piles of rock, they're one of humanity's greatest engineering achievements and one of history's biggest mysteries. They're older than the Roman Empire, older than the Great Wall of China, older than almost every famous building you've ever heard of. And despite centuries of research, archaeologists are still uncovering new secrets hidden inside them. So why did the ancient Egyptians build pyramids in the first place? Were they simply giant tombs? Were they symbols of power? Or was there something much bigger going on? To answer that, we have to travel back, not to the pyramids themselves, but to a time before a single pyramid existed. Because the story begins with a king who wanted something no one had ever built before. Around 5,000 years ago, Egypt wasn't the powerful kingdom most people imagine today. Instead, it was a collection of small farming communities spread along the Nile River. Every year, the Nile flooded its banks, leaving behind rich soil that allowed crops to grow in the middle of an otherwise unforgiving desert. This yearly flood changed everything. It gave people reliable food, stable villages, and eventually enough wealth to build one of the world's first great civilizations. As villages grew into cities, leaders became kings. Those kings became pharaohs, rulers who weren't seen as ordinary humans. To the ancient Egyptians, the pharaoh wasn't just a king. He was a living god. And if a god died, that created a problem. The Egyptians believed death wasn't the end of life. It was simply the beginning of another journey. They imagined an afterlife where the pharaoh would continue ruling forever. But there was one condition: his body had to survive. That's why preserving the body became incredibly important. Long before the pyramids, Egyptians carefully buried their dead in shallow graves dug into the desert sand. Surprisingly, the hot, dry climate naturally preserved many of these bodies. Nature had accidentally invented the first mummies, but there was a downside. As Egyptian society became richer, graves contained jewelry, tools, food, and valuable treasures for the afterlife. And treasure attracts thieves. Very quickly, tomb robbing became a serious problem, so Egyptians started building larger burial structures above the graves. These rectangular stone tombs were called mastabas. They looked simple: flat roofs, sloping walls, nothing like the pyramids we know today. But here's the thing. Every great invention starts with a first version. The mastaba was that first version. Then came a man whose idea would completely change history. His name was Imhotep. If you've never heard of him, you're not alone. But in ancient Egypt, Imhotep became one of the most respected people who ever lived. He served Pharaoh Djoser around 2670 BC as an architect, engineer, physician, and royal advisor. Thousands of years later, Egyptians would even worship him as a god of wisdom. And his greatest achievement began with one simple question: what if a tomb could reach the sky? Instead of building one mastaba, Imhotep stacked several smaller mastabas on top of each other. One became two, two became three. Eventually, 6 giant levels. The result was the Step Pyramid of Saqqara. Standing over 60 meters tall, it became the first massive stone monument ever built by humans. Think about that. Before this moment, nobody had attempted anything even remotely this ambitious. Entire cities had never seen a building this tall. Millions of limestone blocks were carefully cut, transported, and stacked without cranes, bulldozers, or modern machinery. It completely changed what humans believed was possible. But the Step Pyramid wasn't just an impressive building. It represented something much deeper. The Egyptians believed the step shape acted like a gigantic staircase, allowing the soul of the pharaoh to climb toward the heavens and join the sun god Ra. So, from the very beginning, pyramids weren't simply about death. They were about eternal life, about becoming immortal, about proving that a ruler's power could last forever. Here's what makes this so important. Most civilizations built monuments for the living. The Egyptians built their greatest monuments for the dead, because to them, death wasn't an ending, it was a promotion. As the Egyptian kingdom became richer and more organized, each new pharaoh wanted a monument even more impressive than the last. After all, if your father built the tallest tomb on earth, Would you really want yours to be smaller? Probably not. This started something historians often call the first great architectural competition in human history. Each generation experimented with new designs. Some pyramids collapsed during construction. Others cracked under their own weight. Builders made mistakes. They learned. Then they tried again. One of the most fascinating examples is the Bent Pyramid, built for Pharaoh Sneferu around 2600 BC. Halfway through construction, the builders realized the angle was too steep. If they continued, the entire structure might collapse. So they changed the angle midway. The result looks almost bent. Like the pyramid suddenly changed its mind halfway to the top. It's one of history's biggest construction corrections. But it taught Egyptian engineers something priceless: exactly how to build a perfect pyramid. And that lesson would soon lead to something extraordinary. Sneferu didn't stop there. He ordered another pyramid, the Red Pyramid. This time, the design worked. It became the first successful smooth-sided pyramid in history. No steps, no bends, just clean geometric perfection. It was the blueprint for everything that followed, including the most famous pyramid on Earth, the Great Pyramid of Giza. But here's the question that still amazes archaeologists today. How did people over 4,500 years ago build a monument containing around 2.3 million stone blocks, many weighing several tons each, with astonishing precision and without modern machines? The answer is far more incredible than most people realize. The Great Pyramid of Giza wasn't built overnight. It wasn't built by aliens. And it certainly wasn't built by magic. It was built by people, real people. Thousands of skilled workers, engineers, stonecutters, surveyors, boat builders, cooks, doctors, and laborers working together on one of the largest construction projects in human history. Around 2580 BC, Pharaoh Khufu ordered the construction of what would become the tallest human-made structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. Imagine standing at the construction site. There are no cranes, no trucks, no steel, no engines, just human determination. The limestone blocks used for most of the pyramid came from nearby quarries, but the massive granite blocks inside the king's chamber traveled more than 800 kilometers from Aswan, carried along the Nile on wooden boats during the annual floods. Think about that. Some of those stones weighed as much as a fully loaded city bus, yet somehow they arrived exactly where they were needed. For centuries, people imagined endless lines of slaves dragging giant stones through the desert under the whip of cruel overseers. Hollywood loved that version. History doesn't. In the 1990s, archaeologist Mark Lehner helped excavate an entire workers' village near the pyramids. What they found completely changed our understanding. The workers lived in organized communities. They had bakeries, breweries, sleeping quarters, medical care. Their bones even showed signs of healed injuries, meaning injured workers were treated rather than abandoned. These weren't disposable slaves. They were skilled laborers, craftsmen, and seasonal workers who took pride in building monuments for their king. Some historians even believe working on the pyramid was considered an honor, a way of serving both the pharaoh and the gods. Here's the really amazing part. Nobody knows the exact construction method. Some researchers suggest long, straight ramps. Others argue for spiral ramps wrapping around the pyramid. A few propose a combination of different techniques. Even today, archaeologists continue debating the details, and that's part of what makes the pyramid so fascinating. The mystery isn't completely solved, but here's what makes this story much bigger than giant stones. The pyramids weren't simply construction projects, they were messages. Messages carved into the landscape itself. Imagine living in ancient Egypt and seeing the Great Pyramid shining under the desert sun. Originally, it wasn't the weathered brown structure we see today. It was covered in smooth white limestone casing stones, polished until they reflected sunlight like a giant mirror. From miles away, it would have appeared almost glowing, a mountain of light rising from the desert. That wasn't accidental. The pyramids symbolized the rays of the sun. The Egyptians believed the sun god Ra traveled across the sky each day before descending into the underworld each night, only to rise again the next morning. To them, the pyramid represented rebirth. It was designed to help the pharaoh join this eternal cycle. Death wasn't failure, death was transformation. Everything inside the pyramid served that purpose. The burial chamber, the carefully placed passages, the treasure, the food, the furniture. Even small statues known as shabtis, placed inside tombs, were believed to work for the pharaoh in the afterlife. Imagine packing for a journey that lasts forever. That's exactly what they were doing. And yet, despite all that preparation, almost every royal tomb was robbed. Gold disappeared, jewelry vanished, treasures were stolen centuries ago. Ironically, the enormous pyramids designed to protect the pharaohs also announced exactly where they were buried, not exactly the world's best hiding place. Over time, Egyptian rulers realized something. Building giant pyramids attracted unwanted attention. So later, pharaohs changed their strategy. Instead of constructing massive monuments visible for miles, they hid their tombs deep inside remote desert valleys. One of those places became famous as the Valley of the Kings. There, rulers like Tutankhamun were buried beneath the rocky hills rather than inside giant pyramids. The age of pyramid building had ended, but the pyramids themselves never stopped inspiring people. Greek historians traveled to Egypt just to see them. Roman emperors admired them. Medieval travelers wrote stories about them. Napoleon stood before the Great Pyramid during his Egyptian campaign in 1798 and reportedly told his soldiers, "From the top of these pyramids, 40 centuries look down upon you." Whether he said those exact words or not, the feeling remains the same. Standing before the pyramids makes you feel incredibly small. Even today, new discoveries continue to surprise archaeologists. In 2017, scientists using cosmic ray imaging detected a massive hidden void inside the Great Pyramid. Not a small crack, a huge unexplained space. No one knows exactly why it's there. Could it be another chamber, a construction feature, a hidden passage? The truth is, we're still searching, and that's remarkable. Because after more than 4,500 years, one of the world's most studied buildings still refuses to give up all of its secrets. That's the power of ancient Egypt. The more we learn, the more questions appear. So here's the full picture. Small farming villages grew along the Nile. Kings became living gods. Simple graves became mastabas. Imhotep stacked those mastabas into the first step pyramid. Architects learned through failure, building structures like the bent pyramid before finally creating the perfect design. Then came Khufu's Great Pyramid, a monument so ambitious that it stood as the tallest building on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. Not because ancient Egyptians had impossible technology, but because they had extraordinary organization, remarkable engineering, deep religious beliefs, and an unwavering determination to build something that could outlive them, and they succeeded. The next time you see the Great Pyramid in a documentary, a movie, or a photograph, don't just see a giant pile of stones. See thousands of people working together under the blazing Egyptian sun. See architects solving problems no one had solved before. See a civilization trying to build a bridge between Earth and eternity. Because the pyramids were never just about burying kings. They were about defeating time itself. Empires rise, empires fall, cities disappear beneath the sand. But some ideas become so powerful that they survive for thousands of years. And maybe that's the greatest mystery of all. If you enjoy uncovering the incredible stories hidden behind history's greatest wonders, there are many more ancient mysteries waiting to be explored.